Hello and welcome to the Human Frequency. We are coming to you from our new place, although you might not know because we still have the poo painting and the Originates behind us. And so as you can see, nothing has really changed.
Well, we're back in our native habitats. We're just trying to keep everything in the same place. And once again, I'm trying to grow a beard, so I must apologize for my ungainly appearance. It's going to take a couple of months because my hair grows pretty slow, but I'm going to look like a rough, wild mountain man for the next few months.
Well, we are rough, wild mountain people now, and we did actually try doing a ranch job and really living the life out here. And we've had a lot of time to adapt to these surroundings since we moved out of LA almost 5 years ago. But if you checked out our last episode, I'm not going to get too into our sob story right now, but we were pretty much misled into taking a job on a ranch, which I thought was going to be awesome. And it turned out to not be what it was advertised to be. So we, after, a few months, not very long, 3.5 months or so of constant psychological, physical, emotional abuse, basically getting the equivalent of minimum wage split between us. We realized that if this woman was doing this on the books, she would be shut down. This woman is a criminal and she should be in jail. That's the end of that story. We did get out of that situation and we're very, very happy because we were given back pretty much what we had before. God was very gracious to us. We learned our lesson and we got returned to our native type habitat, a home very, very similar to our old home.
But minus a lot of the extraneous space that we had, and more importantly than that, the extraneous stuff that we had. One of the biggest lessons that we were able to glean from this whole experience is that materialism is a tremendous trap, and if you don't take an honest look into the possessions that you have and reduce what you have, they will become more and more burdensome to you. Because look what's going on. This summer, the fires in California were terrible.
Yeah.
People having to leave at a moment's notice and inevitably have to leave 90% of their stuff behind, and in many cases it just goes up in flames and you never see it again. So these possessions are so fleeting. We had to learn a huge lesson in particular because you and I, let's face it, we never thought of ourselves as materialistic. We always kind of hated that whole thing. When we lived in Los Angeles, we lived in very small units generally, and when we moved up to where we are now, we suddenly had this huge place, and we just over the years kind of adapted to a place of that size by acquiring more stuff. And it's not something we intended to do, obviously, but it's just something that happens because you want to fill the space, but it just doesn't work in the long run. And that was a big lesson for us.
Materialism was the hugest lesson we learned. There are so many lessons we learned from taking this job, but the main focus today, we want to talk about moving, because now you hear a lot of people are moving, and just look at the lyrics of the song Ball of Confusion and know that moving out and moving in because of the color of your skin and all of these things that are going on in the world that were going on then, decades ago, are going on today. If you look at the lyrics of that song, it could have been written today, except for the part about young people with their heads in the sky. Their heads are in the phone. That's the only change I would make to those lyrics for today.
Well, the iCloud is in the sky.
That's true, actually. Supposedly, I really don't even know what the internet is. I mean, does anybody? But anyway, we moved recently, and so that brought all these things to mind, because for a while we were talking about not moving, and that's pretty much, we wouldn't have moved if we hadn't been misled into this job, because moving doesn't change anything. And I already knew that because I've tried moving so many times, that I realized, okay, we have a great landlord, a nice house, everything is functioning. If we move and rock the boat, even with all the problems we were having in the neighborhood with parasites and trespassing and violations of our property, we had, horrible things over the years to deal with over there, but it wasn't worth it to move. But then we were misled into something that led us to move, and then I feel like that was a trap and we failed the test, kind of. But then we ultimately passed the test because we learned our lesson. And like in the book of Job, when Job finally learned his lesson, God took everything from him. His life, he let Satan take everything from him, everything short of killing him. That's the only thing he didn't let Satan do. And at the end, he finally got it. He finally learned his lesson, and God returned everything to him twofold. And in our case, it's a miracle. We gave up our beautiful house that we loved, and we made a horrible mistake. And when we learned our lesson, God returned us to a house pretty much just like our old one. In so many ways, it's kind of strange. It faces the same way. It has a similar view. It's got the same
paintings.
We set it up as similarly as we could. It's almost like he returned us to our same house, but he cut off like 2/3 of the space. So we came from LA living in 500 square feet, and we moved up here, and for way less money, we were then living in 1,500 square feet all of a sudden. We didn't know what to do with it, and we didn't even use a lot of it. And then
we had a whole bedroom that it was just a storage unit for us, basically.
So then we went and took this job, and I'm going to get into the reasons we did that because we learned about our materialism through taking that job. Then we were returned to a house exactly like our old one in every way, except that it's much, much smaller. It's also significantly less expensive. And I mean, even less than we were paying at our cheapest in LA when we first knew each other. So it's unbelievably cheap.
But the really interesting thing here is that, and this is how it ties into the title of this episode, is that we only moved 3 or 4 miles. And first of all, they're 3 or 4 miles towards civilization.
Well, we've moved twice, right? So we moved once, which was about 8 miles from where we were deep in the mountains to the ranch. And then we moved another like 4 miles to where we are now. So it wasn't very many miles.
But even more importantly, those 4 miles, they feel more like 400 miles. We feel like we moved literally to a different state. Yes. And I don't just mean a different physical state, but a different, the state that's going on a much higher level.
Yes.
And that, I think, is sort of the focus of what we need to talk about today, because I know a lot of people, and I've known a lot of people for years, that have absolutely hated where they lived. When we lived in LA, we couldn't stand it for the most part, and all of my friends and acquaintances at the time, they had serious problems with where they lived. I mean, I don't really recall having a friend who was content with where they lived and happy, and I'm not going anywhere, everything here is perfect. It just doesn't work that way, especially in an urban area, because there's so many problems with living in such a concentrated space with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, we know how people are, so
everybody's moving. Well. So that's the thing, is now we've got this crazy real estate market, and people are moving out of California in droves, and they're thinking that by doing this, they're going to improve their lives because California has so many problems. They don't want to live in the state of California anymore. Political problems, a lot of oppression. There's so many problems here, very high taxes. There's a huge list of reasons why people are leaving California. It is probably one of the most oppressive states, other than maybe New York. I mean, the more liberal, the more oppressive. Not political. So the whole point here is going to be that we need to get away from that. It's not like people think of Trump as some kind of savior because they think that he's going to take care of all these problems that the liberals have caused. It's just...
And the liberals think that Biden will be their savior and take care of all the problems that Trump...
It's a never-ending cycle of confusion.
Exactly.
And
it's a
ball of confusion. And so what's going on right now is people are moving out of California really quick. And I know a lot of people who are. And people from near where we live are leaving California. And in fact, somebody I was speaking with was just on a trip and checking out property in Arizona and really wants to move there, but his wife doesn't want to. I mean, I can understand that. They have a beautiful place here. They're settled. We shouldn't have to move to another state because we're being oppressed in the one we're in. But that's what they were looking into, is the idea of leaving. And he says you can't even rent a U-Haul one way out of California right now. They're completely booked up. So that's to give you an idea of how much people are leaving California. And they're leaving it for these various problems. And especially since COVID, the computer virus, the government here is completely out of control because they're losing their grip on their control of humanity now. And so, they're pretending that there's this flu, this never-ending flu, and everybody's having to wear masks everywhere. This very, very restrictive. I mean, we went to the library for the first time yesterday in a long time because it was shut down. We had to make an appointment to go to the library. So this is what we're looking at here. It's kind of crazy.
Well, the problem here is that, yeah, everyone's leaving California, but until you address the origin of the problems that are causing people to move, you're not going to solve the problem. What's going on in California is just going to translate to Arizona or Idaho or any one of the other myriad places that people are moving. Yeah. So that's, and again, this goes back to what you just said, that the whole political thing is just a dog and pony show. We have to be getting away from this. Yes. This is what causes the problems. And of course, it's being portrayed on television like every 4 years. Oh, this is the new solution. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Our standard of living will go back up again. It's all a bunch of crap. It's all a lie.
Well, I wanted to mention something, actually. I used to study Buddhism. I still love meditating. It's a very, very peaceful state of mind. I think spiritually we're Christians, but Buddhism has a lot of really, really great ideas. And one of them is, and the main one is, that everything originates in the mind. And I think that a lot of these ideas can kind of translate over to Christianity too. Every problem that we have, it originates with us. And so if we think that moving is going to solve the problem, it's not, because the problems will follow us. If the problem is within us, it will follow us. And moving, it addresses the effect of the problem,
not the cause.
Exactly. And we actually made a list. I was going to read a list of reasons people move, and actually
read ahead.
Originates solves a lot of these, by the way. So
it can.
Here's a list of reasons why people hate where they live, okay? Authoritarian interference.
Top of the list.
That's the top of the list. And usually it's government. People are oppressed on their own properties because it's not their own property. They think it is, but it's not. They're oppressed by high property taxes, and the government is telling them what they can do or can't do with it. They have to get permits for everything. Obviously, it's not their property. But government interference is huge. In case like people like us, we don't buy a place, we rent a place. Landlord interference is huge. We've been very fortunate up here not to have to deal with that. We've had very nice landlord for the time we lived here, and we moved into a new place, and so far so good. So hopefully that's not a problem. In LA, landlord interference is huge, and I'll tell you why. They want you out. When you're in LA, as soon as you're in, they want you out because the rents keep going up. So they can't raise it on you more than a small amount. But if they want to raise it a lot, they're going to have to make your life hell. So you give notice voluntarily, and then they can do it.
Right.
So authoritarian interference is like the number one on our list. There's a whole bunch of others. Crime. That's a big reason people hate where they live. They live in a high crime area. Noise. Noise from construction, noise from partying, barking dogs. There's all kinds of sources of noise. That's a big reason people don't like where they live. Environmental issues. Destruction of habitat, air pollution. Where we are, deforestation is a real problem. The Forest Service thinks that forest fires are caused by too many trees as opposed to arson. So there's problems of that going on here.
Well, they don't actually think that. That's just what they say.
Yeah.
But that's the excuse to, what? Cut down more trees.
Yeah. Environmental problems is a big reason people don't like where they live.
Well, I think that another problem with this property boom is that people are constantly redoing their houses, constantly knocking stuff down, repairing stuff, adding stuff on. That creates lots of noise. Yeah. And there's no end in sight when you start these projects. I mean, you could live in Beverly Hills and you're not guaranteed quiet there.
Noise is huge. Noise is huge. People want a peaceful place to live. It almost does not exist. That was our problem at our last place, was constant noise.
Yeah, you drive through good parts of LA. Every third house, there's a green fence around it. It's a real problem.
Well, here's some others. Traffic. A lot of people have problems with that. Getting stuck in traffic all the time. That's an LA problem for sure. Light pollution. That's a big problem in most places. It's almost inescapable. Yeah,
that's one thing that Orgonite gifting will not necessarily impact, but that's why we have things like blackout curtains. When we lived in LA, blackout curtains is the only way you can get any type of rest at night, because we're very light
and you also need earplugs, and white noise help with noise. And
Yes.
they're not like the ultimate solutions, which is to get away from people. But the other two reasons I have on here: weather. That's a lot of people don't like the weather where they live, and that's a huge reason people move. And materialism. People want bigger and better houses, and they have all kinds of reasons for physical world reasons for thinking that moving is going to help them. And I can tell you that when we moved to the ranch, there were materialistic reasons behind it. So we're going to get more into that. I do want to talk a little bit about solving some of these problems here.
Real quick, though, you mentioned white noise. I also want to suggest ambient music. That's also really good. We've got a long list. Steve Roach, Andrew LaHiff, Philip Wilkerson. There are a great many.
It's free floating music. If you go to Bandcamp, the label is called Free Floating Music, and you could check out a myriad of amazing ambient artists there. And yes, of course, Steve Roach is our favorite. But if you go to the Free Floating Music, they have some compilations. And if you check these out, they're called, some of them are Quiet Friends, Reflection is another really good one.
Conception.
Yeah. And check out these compilations, because any of the artists on there, you can then look them up on Bandcamp and check out their music. And a lot of them offer music at a very, very low price. Some are free. You can give them donations. But
yeah, they have a Name Your Price feature on Bandcamp, a lot of them. And there are a lot that have discounts on, if you buy their full discography, you can get like 40% off or even more sometimes. So it's worth checking out. There's a ton of ambient artists. There's more than you can ever possibly even go through in a lifetime.
And this is a great way to deal with noise problems, because the point is that moving to a different location is not going to solve the problem. So we're talking about actually changing the way your mind works, and actually Originates is a great way to do that. And some of these problems, I'm going to go over the list. Let's go over which ones Originates solves, because you would be amazed if you make and gift Originates in your area, how many of these problems can be at least alleviated, if not eliminated.
Well, I think it's obvious that the so-called authorities do not like Originates. It's toxic to them. So,
well, they're AI, so then you'll have to go back and check out some of our episodes if you haven't. The authorities, the civil authorities, are not human. They are not human. They might look human, sort of, but they're not. And they don't even really look human. Let's get real here, okay? Empress Newsom.
In some cases, not even close.
Empress Newsom does not look human. Trump does not look human. Neither does her husband. Okay, anyway. So you can definitely take down that AI authoritarian interference with Originates. At least calm it down. You're not going to necessarily wipe them out completely, but it did cause a massive computer virus for them. All that energy,
certainly
all that
did.
Healthy, life-giving energy hurts the parasites.
Crime
is definitely reduced. I mentioned this in my book. It's kind of near the end of the book. After years and years of gifting in Los Angeles and in California, they had the lowest crime on record in decades in Los Angeles. And they say it's because they increased police force. I don't think that's the reason, because I've heard from people that I know who have put Originates around their property and in not such great areas. Great reduction in crime, even a reduction in conflicts between neighbors. I've heard remarkable results, and I've seen remarkable results. We've actually expelled parasites from the neighborhood that were of a criminal element with Originates. It actually expels that whole thing.
Noise, it does help, perhaps not as much as it does with crime, but it can help, because it depends what the source of noise is.
Yes.
A lot of noise is just due to people's, I'll just be blunt, their addiction to their smartphones, and that's causing them to just behave erratically. And certain other things like dogs barking, that's a perpetual problem everywhere.
That could be. I don't have coronavirus.
It can help with that too. I mean,
it calms them down. Animals are calmed down.
It does calm animals down, but
remember the dog in San Diego? And I did mention this in my book too. We were staying at an Airbnb in San Diego, and the dog was crazy.
The problem with dog barking is that a lot of it is caused by neglect. People get these dogs, and they never show them any attention. They rarely walk them. They often just leave them outside for days and days. It's just it's very sad what people do with their pets sometimes.
But you can calm the dog down with Orgonite.
It can be done.
We saw a dramatic change in the behavior of this dog in just 2 days when the dog's owner was gone, and it was just us. And she wasn't there with her smartphone, and there wasn't a ton of CFL bulbs on in the house. We changed the light bulbs when we were in an Airbnb. We had turned off the Wi-Fi and while she wasn't there, and we had Orgonite everywhere. And the dog went from barking and being crazy constantly to sleeping at our feet. So you can see, you can calm animals down a little with it.
Not even sleeping, just laying there.
And partying, too. We mentioned construction. Yeah. You're not necessarily going to stop your neighbors from destroying their houses, but loud partying, all this kind of stuff, it is caused by parasitic interference, and Orgonite can definitely calm down people, and it raises consciousness in the whole neighborhood.
Environmental issues? Definitely. I mean, when you have the U.S. Forest Service talking about destroying trees, well, you gift Orgonite, you bring in more rain, more snow, more weather systems where it's natural. You won't have you won't have the same type of terrain that causes wildfires. I mean, the wildfires, of course, are caused by arsonists, not really by anything else, despite what we're told. But the fact is that this goes to the Project Monsoon that we would like to do. We would like to start having weather systems coming into California even during the summer. And that way, when August rolls around and these pyromaniacs come out of the woodwork, they won't be able to light anything on fire because it'll be too green and full of moisture.
Well, this is our hope, and it has to be what's natural. So, you can't custom create your weather. You can only restore God's creation. But if indeed, as I theorize, monsoons are actually natural for Southern California in the summer, I mean, it makes sense because they're happening east of here. So if it is indeed natural for us to have some monsoonal moisture in the summer, then this project will bring in monsoonal moisture and hopefully alleviate wildfires. So you can actually help a lot with environmental problems with Orgonite. But that's the whole point of gifting. Increase rainfall, increase plant growth. So, you can't stop the Forest Service from wanting to cut down trees. They're always going to want to do that. But right now, the trees are growing back at such a fast rate. It's amazing how many baby trees there are because we've been gifting this area for the last 4.5 years.
And what's equally amazing is when they start touting these statistics about how many millions of dead trees are laying there. Well, they're not talking about all of the living ones or the baby ones that have replaced them. It's completely skewed statistics here. So
we have a few problems. I don't know if it will help traffic, gifting Orgonite. However, I can tell you this, and it's kind of a side effect. Orgonite did cause computer virus 19, and that's what they're using against the humans. They're calling it COVID. It's last year's flu, and they're saying it's COVID, but Orgonite gifting pretty much caused the computer virus. So it did actually, as a side effect, reduce traffic. But that's just kind of a side note because I don't think Orgonite gifting is actually going to do that. But it does a lot of these things.
Nor will it do much for light pollution.
Probably not. People are crazy shades. With their lights at night. They're crazy. They're nuts. Like against God, that God made day and night, but they say, no, we want day all the time. So
weather?
Well, there you go. I mean, it totally fixes the weather. Now, if you want it to be like Florida and you live in Pennsylvania, it's not going to give you what you want because you can't completely change the climate with it. It has to be whatever is the natural weather. However, it increases precipitation across the board. I mean, no matter where you are, you will see an increase in precipitation.
My mom was born in Pittsburgh. What did they do when she was about 10? They moved to Florida. So that's perhaps what you should do if you don't like the weather in Pennsylvania, which is totally understandable.
But you can increase rainfall with Orgonite, and people want to see a decrease in rainfall with it, and that's probably not going to happen. What you will see happen is if you live in an excessively rainy place, is instead of having that splattery, depressing kind of drizzle all the time, you're going to have more like a steady normal rain and then sun alternating. So instead of just that perpetual gloom, you'll have more of alternating weather. But for the most part, increase of snow and rain and lower temperatures is not a result of their warfare against us. It is actually a result of restoration of this garden planet, which is supposed to be quite wet and temperate. It's not supposed to be hot and dry here.
Orgonite helps with a lot of these problems, but our problem that we were dealing with was materialism, and living on this ranch with this horrible woman. It was just sort of like a mirror for our own materialism, watching what was happening with her and the way her behavior, it degenerated even in the couple of months that we were there.
Well, she's on a downward spiral, which is the only way it can go. So what happened for me was I didn't realize that we moved to the ranch for materialistic reasons. I mean, I knew that I wanted to return to the land. I wanted to do this trade for living, for working without money. There were some noble reasons to it, but there was also materialistic reasons that I didn't realize. For example, I wanted to live in a luxurious environment that was beyond my means. I hadn't thought about it so much, but we could never afford to live on a 20-acre property like that. And it was absolutely a beautiful piece of land, just gorgeous, horses everywhere, and out in this nice valley, trees and open plains. So everything I like, just a beautiful place. It was a luxurious home too. The home itself was, other than the perpetual noise and nuisance, because they were deliberately making our lives a nightmare because it was part of their house. But the appearance of it was beautiful. And yeah, we were able to live in a place we could never afford on our own. So,
and I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is really important. Nobody can live in a place that they can afford. That's why people take home loans.
Well, some people live within their means, but most people don't. That's the problem.
But this bubble, this market is being driven by that very behavior. And I can't stress this enough. Until people start living within their means, housing will never be affordable, ever. I mean, look what's happening. There's no reason that these structures should, these piles of wood and wires and insulation should cost that much. There's absolutely no logical reason for it, except that it's just big money for banks.
Well, loans, they manipulate the
usury.
Price.
This is evil. This is a tremendous iniquity, and people just keep feeding it. If people stop taking home loans, houses would go down to what they're actually worth, but that would require people living within their means, and not it's like this situation where we wanted to live in this luxurious setting, but we couldn't afford it. But what?
Well, we ended up paying for it in our labor and then some. So we ended up getting, when I figured out what the rent would be as opposed to doing a trade, it was really a sad situation. We were getting like really a few dollars an hour, and it was a waste of our lives.
But this is just a micro example of something that's going on a macro scale. And this is such a terribly destructive behavior, because it hurts us and it hurts everyone around us, because nobody can afford anything.
The other reason that we moved there was we wanted to save money. And so we thought, by not paying rent and just working extra, in addition to everything we already do, and by the way, what we do is a full-time job. I mean, you wouldn't think so, but if you look at the gifting projects we've done over the years, you could see how Orgonite making and gifting can be a full-time job when you do it on this scale, as well as teaching. And I wrote a book that took more than full-time for a couple of years. That was a crazy amount of time it took. So we're working very, very hard, and we thought, we could do even more work to attain this goal of saving money so we can buy our own property. Of course, now I'm not even sure if we're going to do that, because we have to figure out if it can be done lawfully. We don't want to take a loan because, as Gabe mentioned, usury is a crime. It's a sin. We don't want to participate in that. And by the way, if you think about it, it's affecting a lot of things, these loans, like cars. A truck costs like $50,000. That's what a house should cost. You should be able to buy a house outright for $50,000 once you've saved up for years and years. It's this iniquity that's causing people to not be able to have their basic needs met without depending on these parasitic corporations.
And by the way, usury is a crime, yes, but it's both sides of it. It's not just the bank committing the crime by charging interest. It's by you taking it. that's also a crime. If you're aiding and abetting it in that way, you're just as guilty as the bank.
Well,
is.
And you're going to get robbed.
Fact.
You're going to pay like 3 times what it would have cost. I want to talk a little bit about that mirror for materialism that I saw, because we were watching this woman in her life, and her life was a nightmare. Okay, she was working even more than us, if you believe it. I mean, she was like a slave driver, but she did it to herself too, and she was working like more than double full-time. I mean, it was an insane amount of work that she was doing so that she could attain these material things. And the amount of stuff she had, I mean, it was insane. How many horses does one woman need? How many RVs does one woman need? The list goes on. And I could see that what I was seeing in her, though I could see it in myself too, not on that huge of a scale, but it was like I could see the ultimate outcome of continuing down the path of materialism, and not just as far as acquiring all the stuff that you can't even deal with. I mean, there's no way to even maintain all that stuff. But the evil that it ultimately causes is just such evil, not just about acquiring stuff and hoarding stuff, but what you do to other people to get that stuff. Exactly. She did not gain any of it ethically. She has been stealing labor for the last almost 20 years, I think. I don't know how long it's been going on, but I know that this place has been around for a while, that she's had the property for a while, and I know she's had workers for a long time. And I've talked with other people who have worked there, and unfortunately they were not straightforward with us about the iniquity going on there, because they don't understand Satan like we do. They don't see it like we do because they don't have the eyes to see. But what she was doing was stealing labor. She was forcing people into slavery. I mean, she saved hundreds of thousands of dollars, potentially $1 million in what she should have been paying workers. And it's a crime. And this is ultimately what it leads to when you're materialistic, is not just hoarding for yourself, but taking from others, stealing.
Iniquity. And the reason that we had to see such a overt example of it is because there's no end to it. You don't acquire a certain amount and say, okay, I've got what I need, now I can relax. It doesn't work that way. You just keep wanting more and more and more and more and more. And that's when in the book of James, when he talks about serving mammon, that's what that is, because there's no end to it. Once you start, you're ensnared. And we had this woman right in front of us every day who was just caught in a straight line down.
She was in a downward spiral big time, and
it was
she's going to get what
to
she
watch.
deserves eventually. She's going to get what she deserves eventually. She stole from us. She stole our labor. Then at the end, she stole our money. I mean, I had to pay to keep our horse there, and she steals. That's ultimately how she got her wealth. I mean, it's just, this is the end result of worshiping mammon, and worshiping mammon is worshiping self. It's worshiping Satan.
But while we were living there, something very important happened that opened our eyes. And you mentioned RVs earlier. Mm-hmm. We had a friend who we met up with who was selling an RV, and we never really thought much about RVs in the past, but it was at that time, it was what we were dealing with at that time, that just the mention of it got our wheels turning. Yeah. And this sort of began a foray into an area that was foreign to us, that we'd never thought about before. And this happened in LA when a similar thing happened. We had a place that we had lived at for a long time, and we were in a routine, we were comfortable with it. And for reasons that were
also materialistic.
I was trying to find a different way to put it.
We were looking for something bigger and better. Not necessarily bigger, but better.
For reasons that were not noble, we chose to leave that place for something that we thought would be better. And we lasted a very short time there because it didn't work out. And we had to be out. We
were abused there too.
Yes, we were.
We were told that we couldn't make Originates there.
We gave notice, and we were on a truncated timetable. We had to be out of this place, and that timetable caused us, once our applications to other places in LA were not going well, we started thinking about...
We didn't have bad credit or not applications. We had no answers to our phone calls. All those Craigslist ads were fake ads. Nobody would even return my calls. So it wasn't that our applications weren't going well. It's that those are fake ads. We did an episode on that a while back, that Craigslist is full of fake ads just to inflate the housing bubble.
Almost exclusively.
Yeah.
So, and this was going on years ago, obviously, but we didn't realize it in early 2016 that we were just banging our heads against a wall. But the fact that it wasn't working out caused our brain wheels to turn and say, well, maybe we should start expanding our search outward, just like kind of like George Costanza, moving in concentric circles outward. But
we wanted to get out of LA anyways, so this was our chance to leave. And we were brought to something we never would have expected. I mean, it was kind of just given to us.
But it was only by opening our minds that we would even consider doing something like that. Because a year before, when we lived in Hollywood and we were content for the most part in our old place, never would have even occurred to us to do something that radically different. Mm-hmm. And that's the same situation here. We were stuck in such a rut that caused us to start thinking about things a little differently. And when we thought about an RV, we thought, yeah, maybe we could actually do this. We could actually afford this. It would be exclusively on our own terms. Now, granted, there's a lot of complications in doing such a thing. You have to get a truck and have the hookups and things like that. But it at least got us thinking. And that was the beginning of us getting out of the situation we were in.
We realized that we would have to downsize. I mean, that pretty much was the answer. The trailer would have been a little smaller than what we lived in LA, about 100 square feet smaller, just under 400 square feet. But that sounded feasible to me. And although now that I look at the situation, I know we couldn't have just moved into it. We have to downsize and downsize and downsize. We left a 3-bedroom house, moved down to a 2-bedroom place. Then we left that 2-bedroom place at the ranch and moved down to a 1-bedroom place. And we got rid of an amazing amount of stuff. I mean, it's crazy how much we had been hoarding. I didn't even realize it. We let go of a lot of material possessions, let go of the need to hold on to these things. Things seem to lose importance after a while. And you realize that it's really, when we're moving, we're trying to improve our lives. And location and things are not really what's causing us to stay in a low state of being. It's that we need to overcome these material obstacles. We actually are trying to overcome a problem within the mind, a consciousness problem. When we're moving, we're trying to find something better. We want to feel better. We want to do better. But a lot of the problems we're trying to solve physically, they're actually spiritual problems. So we realized that holding on to material stuff was keeping us bogged down in third dimensional consciousness. And it's amazing how much lighter we feel having gotten rid of it. I mean, it's a challenge for sure working here. I'm used to having an office. I'm used to having separate spaces to make Orgonite. And now we're having to kind of figure it out. But we're able to manage and even save a lot of money because we have some major gifting projects coming up. And every summer, pretty much our routine for the last few years is we sell Orgonite and it funds our gifting. Every summer, we drain our bank accounts gifting Orgonite. And this summer, things went a little different because of COVID. We thought, okay, it's really dangerous to travel. Things are not safe out there, especially in California. We said, look, we're given this opportunity to hole up on this ranch and save money. We never save money.
And live with our horse.
And live with our horse. We never save money in the summer. Every summer, we go out there and drain our bank accounts gifting Orgonite, which is a great thing to do. I mean, we've restored the climate. We have almost no chemtrails ever. We have rain in its season and clean air. It's beautiful. So I don't mind draining my bank account for that. But this summer, it went different. And instead of draining it, we saved a little, not a lot, but we saved a little bit. And then we got moved to a better place, a place where we can concentrate, where we can work, where I can work on my book, where I have peace and quiet, and where we're saving enough money that Project Monsoon is not going to be as big of a deal as I had anticipated. I was wondering, okay, how are we going to manage this? We're thinking, about 1,000 tower busters for the Phoenix Mesa area. It's a huge project. I'm thinking actually 500 tower busters would probably do a huge amount there, but that's a big project. So, imagining the cost of making the Orgonite, of the gas and the lodging and all these things. it's sort of daunting, but we've done these things over and over again. We did Seattle, Portland. I mean, we've been everywhere doing this. So now that we're saving money on rent, it actually is making it a lot more feasible for us to get out there and do huge gifting projects. And
winter. This will be a wintertime gifting.
I think it'll be a wintertime gifting. The whole object behind it is that we hypothesize that by gifting that area, it will expand the range of the monsoons in the summer. So we can have wetter summers in the West and hopefully a reduction in wildfires. And
also the intensity of the monsoons themselves, because as we saw when we were gifting in the Northwest, there were way too many systems, and the systems were very strong, that even with all of the rain suppression going on up there would still be rain. It would just rain out there and there would be nothing left for California. But the idea here also is that without all of these active DOR sources in the Phoenix Mesa area, that the systems themselves will be stronger, and that will in and of itself carry rain into further places.
Right, because Eastern California gets monsoons, and I think, why doesn't it expand just a little bit westward? And I don't know if that's natural or not, although
past the Sierras.
I feel that it is. I feel that it is likely natural because we get the edge of monsoonal systems in Southern California. Even in LA, we get the edge of them. So anyway, this is one of the great benefits of this. We have really greatly increased and altered our state of consciousness by getting rid of stuff, by moving into a small place. We've enabled ourselves to have the finances to do more gifting, which will increase consciousness on a wider scale. I mean, there's so much to be gained from downsizing and living small. So right now, I feel like, if you don't have to move, I think it's great not to move. Moving to a different state, when you're talking about a governmental state, is not going to help your state of consciousness.
We certainly understand.
But I do understand why.
California's a mess right now and always will be. But that's not going to be the solution.
Ultimately, it's not.
The solution is cheap rent. I think that's the best way I can conclude this, is just everywhere has problems. Everywhere sucks. I hate to be optimistic like that, but every place is bad on Earth. It's not a good planet to be on, and you're not going to get any relief in the 3D.
No, ultimately we need to overcome the third dimension. Our way of beginning that process is to get rid of things, even things that meant something to us, things that were sentimental. I mean, we got rid of a lot of things. Letting go of attachments, because we also have to be ready to move at the drop of a hat. So another reason that there's many reasons why we don't buy. One is we can't afford to buy something outright. We'd have to take a loan. That's usury. Don't feel that that's lawful. I would have to do more research into that, but according to the Bible, it's not. And there are so many other pitfalls with that, where you're having to have contracts with counties and banks, and you have to ask permission for everything you do.
Companies.
So we're kind of not inclined to it right now. So that's why renting, it's a much simpler contract for us, and it's lawful. I can tell that what we're doing is okay. But there are many reasons we don't buy. Another one is fire danger, all kinds of environmental problems that could happen like that, where you have to leave in a hurry. Just as a little side note, we tried to get a house in Juniper Hills 5 years ago. We ended up moving up here to the Fraser Park area instead, but we wanted this house very, very badly. It was everything we wanted. It was very affordable. It was on 5 acres. It was a gorgeous cabin right by Devil's Punch Bowl. And for some reason, they wouldn't process the application. This is the application they wouldn't process. It wasn't that we failed it or anything. They just wouldn't run the credit checks. And I kept calling and saying, can you do it? Can you do it, please? We really like the house. And she just kept saying, well, the person who does that's out of the office on a family emergency. And they wouldn't do it. I was pretty devastated by that. I thought about that house many times. We even drove by it about a year and a half ago. We visited the area and drove by it, said, maybe one day we'll move here. Who knows? Well, that whole entire area burnt to the ground in a recent wildfire. There was that huge wildfire that consumed... It consumed, up by the Mount Wilson Observatory.
It started in the mountains north of LA, and it spread north
all the way into the desert.
And that whole area
It's gone.
Pear Blossom, Juniper Hills, Villermo by the Devil's Punch Bowl. It all just got burnt to the ground.
And our beautiful little cabin that I wanted so badly, I haven't been back there since the fire, but based on what they said burnt down, that cabin is gone.
Odds are good.
We were blessed that transaction was blocked, because we would never have left that place.
And it was inexplicably blocked, too. We couldn't figure it out. It was the most bizarre thing.
It was weird. They just wouldn't run the credit check. Just run the credit check. It's so easy. The guy up here that we rented from, he ran it right away, and he gave us the house. So that was what was meant to be. We got our Mustang. We adopted our Mustang up here, that he would have been sent to animal control and exterminated if we hadn't adopted him. And that would have been such a shame for the whole world to lose this treasure of a horse. There's so many reasons we came up here, and I'm very grateful to be here. I actually love this area.
Me too.
But ultimately, all of our problems come from the mind, and we've thought about leaving California too, but we decided against it because it's not going to solve our problems. You just have to you kind of have to take this one day at a time right now, and no rash decisions is what I think, because people are making a lot of rash decisions right now because of the CompVid situation, and we've been misled to think that there's this terrible pandemic and people are losing their jobs over it, and it's just something that right now we're just going to have to get through it. And I say stay put if you can, and if you can move and you can move somewhere cheaper, do whatever you can to save money. Yeah. But this is certainly not a great time to make a rash decision, I don't think. I wouldn't.
It's the time to hunker down and to start educating yourself. We recommend the same materials, the Bible and Marcus, Servant King, to understand what's going on in the world, because you told me about those song lyrics in Ball of Confusion.
Yeah.
It's
read
no
the lyrics, listen to the song. It's today.
It's no different now. It's just slightly different things, but the main the structural issues that plague humanity are exactly the same, and will probably never change, but the least we can do is take care of ourselves.
Yeah. And ultimately this world's going to be destroyed anyway. You know, the Christians and the Buddhists and many other religions and philosophies around the world say that this world will never be healed, and we could see that. So all we could do is heal ourselves. And of course it's good to give Orgonite and do your best for this creation and do your best to heal nature and wildlife and each other, but understand that the world as a whole, this state of consciousness, is not ultimately where it's at. So we can try to heal each other within this realm and try to repair the world, but ultimately we are going to have to elevate to a new way of being, and moving to a higher state of consciousness takes a lot of inner work. And I think ultimately the biggest lesson here is to let go of 3D delights, temptations, and things that you think you need if you don't actually need them.
There is a purpose. I think the creation would have been destroyed a long time ago if there was not a purpose. So there is a reason for us being here, and there's a reason for you listening to us, and we hope that we've enlightened you a little bit with what we learned. It was tough, but we're here, and we're still recovering from what happened. But I want to thank all of you who have emailed us your supportive comments, and just thank you so much for thinking of us and hoping that we're well. We're working on it. It's a process, but we are beginning to recover and regain control of our lives once again, to the extent that we have control. So thank you for your well wishes. Thank you for listening. Please check out our website, www.thekembo.com. There's links to Sharon's blog, there's links to our Orgonite shop, and there's all of the articles, of course, that Sharon's been writing lately. There's going to be a lot more coming out because we have a lot more time on our hands, obviously. So thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. We will see you again next time.